Hello, bruvs. I'm back with Chapter 10 of Napoleon, Bisexual Emperor, Major General Frank Richardson, MG, after a week-long hell week at work, and then I started reading this, and then my phone shut off, so I assumed that there's something wrong with my phone, and my car battery wouldn't start when I left work, so I'm being punished. It's alright. Let's continue with this fucking book, bruv. To the difficult and exhausting labor, surrounded by the customary witnesses of royal accoutrements, but with no one present who loved her as a person, feeling as she did that they were all thinking of the future for France rather than of her, all aware that Paris was waiting for the 101st gun, which would signal the birth of a prince. To all this, one should add for the preceding months of awareness that she had been brought to France for one purpose. All the alarms, rumors, and suspicions, all this added to the normal strain of pregnancy and childbirth was surely enough, but could there have been one potent and unusual factor? Difficult for a man to speculate about the effect of knowing that the child was the result of an experiment of excessive rarity in those days, except perhaps in veterinary practice. It is an intriguing possibility. Napoleon, in his will, acknowledged two illegitimate children, known as the Count Leon and Count Alexander Walewski, but gossip, romantic writers, and even historians have credited him with several others. In Chapter 3, I referred to the fantasy parents, which children and adolescents sometimes adopt as part of their daydreams and unconscious, striving towards what Adler called the goal of superiority. Growing ambition and longings to be somebody lead to dissatisfaction with their home and parents, who they feel are too dull and commonplace to be the true parents of one who feels such inherent superiority. Flights of fancy about being nobly born are obviously more likely to be indulged in by illegitimate children who know only one parent. It sounds absolutely fucking ridiculous, but okay. Napoleon's unique position in the world and his reputation for dalliance made him an obvious choice for such fantasies. Long after his death, claims to be descended from some real or fancied liaison of the great man were quite frequently made. In a book, Les Secrets de Bonaparte, published in 1889, Charles Norroy mentioned a number of such claims. A child born to Madame du Châtel was somewhat vaguely attributed to Napoleon. And so was a certain Mademoiselle Falkenberg, born in the Archbishop's palace in Cologne. A Monsieur Alchard, said to be a son of Napoleon, was granted a pension of 1,200 francs by Napoleon III, so it is evident that the establishment of such claims could be a profitable affair. It did not prove to be so in the case of a colored man, sometimes referred to as the Black Napoleon, who claimed to be the result of some affair with a negress during the Egyptian campaign. He took to a life of crime and was guillotined at Aix in 1824. The claim of Emily Palapra, later Princess de Chimay, to be a daughter of Napoleon, seems to have been almost solely based on her fancied resemblance to him. His brief friendship with her mother is likely to have been a discreet one, because he was then married to Marie Louise and still in the stage of idolizing her because of her imperial lineage, and because she had borne the son who was to continue his dynasty. I wonder if there's a book on the Black Napoleon. I will read that if there is one. It was even suggested that he was the father of a child called... I'm still in the stage of idolizing. It was even suggested that he was the father of a child called Yusuf, although the boy who lived in Elba was already 5 years old when Napoleon landed there. Yusuf had in fact been captured by Barbary pirates, and in due course he was to become a kind-hearted Pauline, Napoleon's sister. And in due course Yusuf had in fact been captured by Barbary pirates, and in due course he was to become a French general. After being befriended as a boy in Elba by the kind-hearted Pauline, Napoleon's sister. This is the sort of evidence used to support the claims of many illegitimate children said to have been Napoleon's. Before he started to boast about his amours, it was not he, but the women themselves who gave gave publicity to his transient affairs. But to return to the two who figured in his will, the particular importance of Count Leon, the son born on 13th December 1806 to Eleanor Denuel de la Plaine, was that he provided Napoleon with evidence which temporarily satisfied him that he was capable of fatherhood. It was precisely for the purpose that the liaison between Eleanor and Napoleon was arranged, and encouraged by his sister Caroline and her husband Joachim Murat. Most historians agree that it was a deliberately conducted experiment as part of the campaign waged by the Bonaparte family against Josephine, whom they hated and referred to as Madame Beauharnais, or as the Emperor's present companion, rather than as the Empress. Napoleon disliked any scandal or impropriety which could affect the reputation of his own family circle, and but for his urgent desire to prove his potency would surely have avoided an entanglement with a young woman of such dubious parentage and social standing as Eleanor. Madame Campan had grave misgivings about admitting her to the famous girls' school, where she became a friend of Caroline Bonaparte, who in due course was to befriend her when the scoundrel to whom her parents had married her, the bogus Captain Revel, was imprisoned for embezzlement and forgery. Suspicions that Napoleon was responsible for Revel's imprisonment to get him out of the way, as he had got rid of Pauline Forez's husband, are almost certainly unfounded. Revel was a blackguard who had left the army under a cloud on account of dishonesty, and he needed no help to get himself into prison, which he did just 2 months after his marriage to Eleanor, who divorced him some 10 months later. After his release from prison, he combined a career of swindling and roguery with attempts to blackmail his former wife and the writing of scurrilous pamphlets about her and about the Marats and Napoleon. The story of Revel, Eleanor, her 3 marriages, and her son is a complex one liberally sprinkled with lawsuits, during one of which Eleanor actually denied that Leon was her son. Leon himself finally degenerated into a rogue, a swindler, a chronic debtor of spongers skilled only in the writing of begging letters. In fact, so like Revel in character that one is tempted to make what? In the disordered society of those days would have been almost an absurd suggestion that his mother's husband might have been his real father after all. That his mother's husband might have been his real father after all. All right. Napoleon's elation on being assured that he was the father of Eleanor's son gave way to torturing uncertainty and wrath after he learned that she had been Murat's mistress, and realized that his experiment in paternity had not been free from ambiguity. Not, in fact, a properly controlled experiment. Josephine knew all about the affair, and it has been assumed by many that it was she who saw to it that doubts were planted in his mind. Queen Hortense was one of those who never believed that Leon was a son of her stepfather, and in her memoirs she assures us that Napoleon himself did not believe it either after he had wrung from Eleanor the confession that Murat had also been her lover. Count Viel Castel's report of the conversation in 1854, during which Lacasse described Napoleon's admission of his feebleness in love-making, included the statement that Napoleon did not regard Count Leon as his son. He attributed the paternity of that child, to Murat. There is fucking bumbling fucker. There is other evidence that Napoleon was finally convinced that Murat was Leon's father, but he continued to take an interest in the boy's career and remembered him in his will. Leon himself always claimed to be Napoleon's son. He was not the man to abandon such a profitable claim, however strong the evidence against it. In those days, blood tests were not available to help in such decisions, and evidence was accepted which would carry little weight in paternity cases today, such as a fancied resemblance to a supposed parent. It has been thought that Napoleon decided to cross-examine Eleanor about her relations with Marat because, as the years of his intimacy with Marie Walewska, the most truly beloved of his mistresses, went by without any signs of a child, his self-confidence was undermined, and he began to suspect that he had too easily accepted the assurances of his sister and her husband that Leon was his son. But meanwhile, his acceptance of Leon as his son had brought about its intended result. Josephine had been divorced, and Marie-Louise was now his second wife. As I spit on the page, on May 5th, 1810, isn't it supposed to be 5th May? Marie Walewska gave birth to a boy, Count Florian Alexander Joseph Walewski, who was generally believed to be Napoleon's son. He was certainly a very different kind of man to Count Leon, and had quite a distinguished career as a soldier, diplomat, and statesman, including service as ambassador in London and as Minister for Foreign Affairs under Napoleon III. If he had any memories of the secret visit with his mother to Napoleon in Elba, they must have been exciting and romantic ones, for a 4-year-old child could not have realized that their kind protector was hastily smuggling them off the island to avoid compromising the chance of the Emperor's coming to join him. But unlike Leon, he does not seem to have ever felt the need to bolster up his own personality by allusions to his distinguished father. Quite the reverse. On one occasion, when he overheard some ladies commenting on his resemblance to his illustrious father, he gently snubbed them by pretending to be surprised that they were old enough to remember Count Walewski. A certain romantic aura has been created around the name of Marie Walewska. Wait, is that the same book? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm dreaming that those names are spelled different there. Who is to me, as to many, the most attractive of all the women in the Napoleonic story. She may even have been the one whom Napoleon loved most deeply, despite his repeated assurances that the pride of place was Josephine's. Marie Walewska certainly deserved his love, for she was the most loyal of all the women in his life, apart from his mother and his sister Pauline. It is easy enough to condone Marie's adulterous liaison with Napoleon by pointing to the pressures to which she was subjected and the intensely patriotic motives which led her to betray her elderly husband. All this has been given due weight in Chapter 7, and it is now necessary to consider whether the Tsar was right when he dismissed Caulaincourt's assertion that Walewska's son was sufficient proof of Napoleon's virility. Marie's early success in bearing a son to her decrepit old husband may have inspired Countess Potocka's malicious innuendo, see Note 2, Chapter 7. And the Tsar's comment, we all know what young Polish women are like. She probably had other lovers. Even if that is regarded as an unwarrantable insinuation, it cannot be denied that, however single-minded and patriotic her motives for yielding to Napoleon may have been, the result was that she did become an adulteress. However protracted and agonized her hesitations before taking that first step, if indeed it really was her first step, it can hardly be called unjust, even if it is a little unchivalrous to wonder if just one more step might have been taken, and taken a little more easily during the 3 years of her liaison with Napoleon before her second child was born. My own guess, and it can be no more than a guess, as all this book has been, is that such a step could have been taken with Duroc, Napoleon's most intimate friend, his conscience, from whom he had no secrets. Napoleon's affection for Duroc is fully authenticated, but opinions differed as to whether Duroc really returned the emperor's affection. If those who believed that he secretly disliked the emperor were right, he would not have been restrained by loyalty and devotion from making advances to his mistress. He might even have done so out of spite or in a spirit of adventure. On the other hand, knowing Napoleon as intimately as he did, he might have thought that he would be doing him a favor by fathering a child which the emperor could accept as his own, thus relieving him from the uncertainty into which he had been thrown when he felt forced to believe that Marat, and not he himself, was the father of Leon. All this is mere speculation, as this entire fucking book has been, but there's no doubt that if he had the inclination, he certainly had plenty of opportunities. It was Duroc who first met Marie at the post house, and Brani, who acted as go-between in the early stages of the affair and explained the sign language which the emperor used when he wanted to preserve secrecy. Dr. Cabanas, who wrote many articles and books about Napoleon's private life and medical history, quoted the Cuban doctor Diego Carbonell, who in 1914 cast doubts upon Napoleon's fertility and suggested that one of his favorites could have been the father of his bastards. Dr. Carbonell did not name Duroc, but Duroc is in fact the only man to whom the term favorite of Napoleon has ever been applied. We have seen in Chapter 8 that it was in fact so used in Napoleon's lifetime by at least one author by contemporary gossip and by the distinguished General Foy, who knew both Duroc and the emperor personally. If it was true, as I believe, that Napoleon was unable to have children, it is very unlikely that he must have known this himself and realized that the rumors about this impotence or sterility, of which he was well aware, were soundly based in fact. It is therefore a fair question to ask why a man of his intellect allowed, indeed encouraged, the world to believe that illegitimate children attributed to them were his own offspring. The answer is not hard to find when we recall his extraordinary attitude to the accusations of incest. When he did nothing to discourage, but actually seemed to welcome suggestions that he was the father of the son of his stepdaughter Hortense. Is that really incest if it's his stepdaughter? I mean, technically it probably is, but I mean, these people were fucking everyone. I thought the German aristocracy was all intermarried too. So, on his own admission, it is plain that he wanted to let it be thought, whatever the cost to his reputation, that he was capable of reproduction. He would rather be thought immoral than impotent. He was unmoved by the distress which the scandalous gossip caused to Josephine and Hortense, or by the devastating effect which it had upon Hortense's relationship with her husband. Typically, Napoleon could see the situation only from his own point of view. It was splendid that the people should believe him to be a father, and Hortense should be proud to be the means of bringing this pleasure to Napoleon and to France. For this abominably selfish attitude there were dynamic as well as personal motives. With his remarkable capacity for identifying himself with the nation, he felt that the interests of the French people were identical with his own, or if they were not, then they ought to be. If Napoleon's despotic egotism was nourished by deep springs arising from unconscious psychological processes, contributed to the development of a career which, however picturesque and enthralling to the historian, brought unimaginable grief and suffering to millions of human beings, then it may be interesting to consider whether modern thought in the realm of psychology might point the way to future avoidance of such consequences of one man's mental disturbance. And that concludes Chapter 10. We shall return at some point in time. And we're also into the 200 pages. Goodbye, bruv. Goodbye.